Hello, and welcome to your Robo AI News. I'm your host, Alex, joined by my colleague, Ben. This wasn't a normal week. This week, the simmering Cold War in artificial intelligence got hot. A landmark lawsuit was filed that could force AI companies to delete the very brains of their models. At the same time, one of the world's most safety-conscious AI labs officially unveiled a new suite of models built specifically for national security and defense operations. The age of AI as a simple commercial tool is over. It's now an instrument of corporate strategy and state power. So what does this mean for your business, your investments, and your career? That's what we're here to figure out. Welcome to the AI Strategic Briefing. Ben, before we dive into the specifics, let's set the stage. The market sentiment right now is incredibly divided. On one side, you have Wall Street, which spent all of May pushing AI stocks to record highs. The S&P 500 had its best May in 35 years, driven almost entirely by AI euphoria. The narrative is clear: growth at all costs, show me the AI revenue.
But on the ground, inside the enterprise, it's a completely different story. We're hearing from CTOs who are paralyzed. They're sitting on what HFS Research estimates is between $1.5 and $2 trillion of technical debt across the Global 2000. They're being asked to build these futuristic AI systems on top of brittle, decades-old infrastructure. It's like trying to put a fusion reactor in a wooden shack.
Exactly. And that tension between market expectation and operational reality is the perfect backdrop for our first major theme this week. The market is becoming so complex, so fragmented, that a new layer of technology is emerging just to make sense of it all. We're calling it the abstraction mandate. So, Ben, what was the catalyst this week that signaled this shift towards abstraction?
There were two, and they happened on the same day, which tells you something. On June 5th, a startup called SkyML launched a platform named Aria. Its entire purpose is to be an AI traffic cop. A user asks a complex question, and Aria's intelligent orchestration engine breaks it down. It then sends the coding part of the question to the model best at code, the creative writing part to the best writer, the data analysis part to another, and then stitches the answers together into one unified result. It's an AI general contractor.
So it's a response to user fatigue. People are tired of juggling 10 different AI chat windows?
Exactly. And on the very same day, Google released an upgraded preview of Gemini 2.5 Pro. And they weren't just bragging about general intelligence. They were highlighting very specific, best-in-class benchmark scores. They're showing off that it's a top-tier coder on the AIDR polyglot test and a world-class scientific reasoner on the GPQA benchmark. This is Google implicitly admitting that the game is no longer about having one model to rule them all. It's about proving you have the best tool for a specific, high-value job.
And that's the strategic why now. The market has matured past the initial wonder of general-purpose LLMs. The demand now is for demonstrable ROI, which means using the right tool for the job. This fragmentation was inevitable, but it created immense complexity. SkyML Aria and its competitors are betting that the intelligence required to route the query will become more valuable than the commodity intelligence of any single model answering it. It's a classic aggregator play, just like Kayak for travel or Uber for transport. They want to own the customer relationship.
But here's the second-order technical consequence that nobody is talking about. This creates a security and data provenance nightmare. When you use a single model, you have one data privacy policy and one security architecture to worry about. When you use an orchestrator, your data is being processed across a dynamic chain of third-party APIs. Who is liable if there's a breach? How do you prove compliance when your data just went on a world tour? This is going to require a whole new generation of MLOps tools just for validating, monitoring, and securing these meta applications.
Which is a massive business opportunity in itself. But the immediate strategic impact is that the very definition of competition is changing. It's no longer just Google versus OpenAI. It's now also the orchestrators trying to commoditize the model providers underneath them. If users become loyal to the orchestrator's results, they don't care if it was Gemini or Claude that generated the answer. The power and the subscription revenue shifts up the stack to that new meta layer.
And we're even seeing specialization happen at a lower level. In early June, Alibaba released a whole series of open-source models, the Qwen 3 Embedding and Re-Ranker series. These aren't for chatting. They are hyper-specialized for multilingual text retrieval, the core of any advanced search or RAG system. And their top model hit #1 on the MTEB multilingual leaderboard.
So even the components are becoming a competitive battlefield. This isn't just a US phenomenon, it's global. It reinforces the point. The era of monolithic AI is over. The future is a complex web of specialized agents and the orchestrators that conduct them.
This brings us to the critical intelligence gap. The question is no longer if this orchestration layer will be significant, but how its economics will function. So here's the question for your team this week. Is the subscription fee for an orchestrator like Aria greater or less than the sum of the individual model APIs it's calling? If it's more, they have a value-add business. If it's less, they are a high-volume, low-margin business vulnerable to being squeezed by the model providers. The answer will determine the entire power dynamic of the AI stack for the next 5 years.
All right, that brings us to our second theme, and it's a big one. As AI moves from the lab into the real world, it's colliding head-on with the rules of society. We're calling this the governance gauntlet. Then, what were the catalysts this week that put AI on a collision course with law and national security?
It was a perfect storm of events. First, on June 5th, Anthropic, a company founded on principles of AI safety, officially launched Claude Gov. These aren't just fine-tuned versions of their public model. This is a dedicated suite of models designed to handle classified materials, to operate in air-gapped, top-secret environments, and to assist in intelligence analysis and defense operations. This is industrial-grade AI for the national security apparatus.
So the line has been officially crossed. Major AI labs are now explicitly in the defense business.
Explicitly. And on the very same day, news broke that Reddit is suing Anthropic. The allegation is that Anthropic illegally scraped massive amounts of user data and conversations from Reddit to train its models, in direct violation of Reddit's terms of service.
This is the fight everyone was waiting for. The fair use argument that has propped up the entire AI training paradigm is now being tested in court.
And to complete the trifecta, OpenAI released its June report on disrupting malicious uses of AI, detailing how they are actively shutting down state-backed covert influence operations from China, Russia, and Iran that were using their models. And, as if on cue, AI pioneer Yoshua Bengio launched Law Zero, a new nonprofit dedicated to building scientist AI, an approach that prioritizes truthfulness and transparent reasoning specifically to counter the risks of deception and misuse in agentic AI.
So let's break down the why now. This is the inevitable maturation of the industry. For the last few years, the only question that mattered was how capable can we make it? Now the questions are, is it legal, is it ethical, and whose side is it on? The launch of Claude Gov signifies that AI is officially an instrument of statecraft. This forces every major AI company to abandon neutrality and pick a side in a geopolitical context. They can no longer just be a global tech platform. They are now, in essence, becoming strategic defense contractors.
And the Reddit lawsuit is the other side of that coin. It's the creators and platform owners fighting back. They are asserting that their data is a valuable asset, not a free public resource for any AI company to train on. This directly challenges the core economic assumption that has driven the last 5 years of AI development.
Let's talk about the second-order technical impacts here, Ben. What does it actually mean to build Claude Gov?
It's a monumental engineering challenge. This isn't just adding a filter. It means building an entirely separate, physically isolated infrastructure. You need data centers that can handle classified information. You need engineers with top-secret security clearances to maintain the systems. You have to create a completely bifurcated technology stack, from the hardware to the model weights to the monitoring tools. It's incredibly expensive and operationally complex.
And the lawsuit?
If Reddit wins, what's the technical fallout?
It could be an extinction-level event for some models. If the court rules that training on this data was illegal, companies could be ordered to purge all of that data and any part of the model that was influenced by it. Imagine trying to perform brain surgery on an LLM to remove every neuron that was trained on Reddit data. It's technically almost impossible. It would force a complete multi-billion-dollar retrain from scratch, and you might lose key capabilities that the data provided. It would instantly make auditable data lineage the single most important feature in MLOps and dramatically accelerate the push for high-quality synthetic data.
Which brings us to the first-order strategic impact. This is a minefield for any investor or executive in this space. The total addressable market for national security AI is colossal, but it comes with immense headline risk and locks you into geopolitical alliances. The Reddit lawsuit threatens the fundamental cost structure of the entire industry. If all significant data sources now have to be licensed, the price to build a frontier model could quintuple, further concentrating power among the handful of hyperscalers who can afford it. This leads us to our critical intelligence gap for the week. The single most important question leadership teams must ask now is, what is our training data liability? The outcome of the Reddit vs. Anthropic case is a pivotal unknown. We must immediately task our legal, policy, and technical teams with conducting a full audit of our model's training data. We need to create a risk matrix that maps every dataset to its source, its terms of service, and its potential legal exposure. We have to start contingency planning now for a future where large-scale public data is no longer a free, all-you-can-eat buffet. All right, for our final theme, we need to connect all this software and strategy back to the physical world, because none of this happens without the chips. And right now, we are in the middle of a brutal hardware arms race, which is slamming directly into the reality of enterprise adoption. Ben, what's the catalyst here?
The big news is the anticipation around AMD's Advancing AI 2025 event on June 12th. All signs point to a full-stack assault on NVIDIA's market dominance. The centerpiece is their next-gen Instinct MI350X GPU based on a new architecture called CDNA4. Production is reportedly ramping up ahead of schedule. But this isn't just about a new chip. The real strategy is the software and the interconnects. AMD is pouring resources into its ROCm software platform, positioning the upcoming version 7.0 as a clean CUDA alternative. They're working to make it easy for developers to move their code from NVIDIA's ecosystem to theirs. And in May, they acquired a silicon photonics startup called Enosemi. This is a direct play to challenge NVIDIA's proprietary NVLink interconnect with high-speed, co-packaged optics.
So the why now is clear. For years, NVIDIA has had a virtual monopoly, not just on the best chips, but on the entire ecosystem. The CUDA software that everyone builds on and the NVLink interconnects needed to string thousands of chips together. AMD understands that competing on chip performance alone is not enough. You have to offer a viable, alternative platform. This is their moment to try and break the lock-in.
And the technical implications are huge for the market. If AMD's ROCm 7.0 software achieves near-seamless compatibility with CUDA, and if their interconnects offer competitive performance, it breaks open the market. Cloud providers and large enterprises will finally have a credible second source for their AI hardware. That competition could drive down prices, ease supply chain bottlenecks, and democratize access to large-scale compute.
But here's the first-order strategic impact, and it's a paradox. This hardware race is making top-tier AI cheaper and more accessible, right at the moment when most enterprises are realizing they can't even use it. We mentioned the $2 trillion in technical debt. A new Pega study this week found that 68% of IT leaders say their legacy systems are preventing them from adopting modern AI. They are drowning in old code and brittle architecture. So we have this incredible hardware innovation happening in a vacuum, disconnected from the messy reality of the average enterprise's IT department.
And the irony is that AI itself is being pitched as the jackhammer to demolish that technical debt. There are now AI tools that can read and rewrite legacy COBOL code, automate integration testing, and compress years of modernization work into months. But to wield that jackhammer effectively, you need the talent and the modern architectural mindset, which is what these companies often lack in the first place. It's a classic chicken and egg problem.
That is the central challenge. This leads to the actionable intelligence gap for any business leader watching. You must ask, are we planning to use AI to demolish our technical debt, or are we just creating a new, more expensive layer of AI debt on top of our existing problems? Answering that question will determine whether your AI initiatives in 2025 accelerate your business or, as the briefing noted, simply accelerate dysfunction. So, let's tie this all together. Ben, what's the single most important signal from this week?
For me, it's that the AI stack is getting deeper and more complex. The battles are being fought at every level simultaneously, from the specialized models to the orchestration platforms that manage them to the software ecosystems, all the way down to the silicon interconnects. Success is no longer about winning at one layer. It's about having a coherent strategy across the entire stack.
I agree, and my takeaway is that the era of AI as a purely technological competition is officially over. The fight is now being waged in the arenas of user experience, abstraction, and real-world governance. Value is migrating away from raw model capability and toward the platforms that simplify its use and the legal and ethical frameworks that legitimize its application. Now, for our contrarian view. There's an argument to be made that this fragmentation and complexity we're seeing, the explosion of specialized models and orchestrators, is not a sign of a maturing ecosystem, but a temporary bubble. The security overhead and vendor management headaches will become so overwhelming that enterprises will eventually retreat to the safety of a single vertically integrated stack from a major cloud provider, even if it's not the best tool for every job. This complexity could be a transient state before a massive reconsolidation. And finally, what's the most important risk our leadership audience must begin planning for in the next 3 to 6 months? It's AI supply chain integrity. With the legal challenges to training data and the rise of complex multi-model systems, companies will soon be held accountable not just for their own AI, but for the full lineage of every model and dataset their systems touch. You need to start planning for AI bills of materials, demanding auditable transparency from your vendors.
Confidence score on that prediction? I'd say a solid 8 out of 10.
This is the new strategic landscape. It's complex, it's moving fast, and the stakes have never been higher. If you found this briefing valuable and want to maintain your strategic edge, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're here every week to cut through the noise. And now we want to hear from you. Based on what you heard today, what is the single biggest AI-related risk you are tracking in your organization? Let us know in the comments below. Ben and I will be down there responding and joining the conversation. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
This week, the factory floor. The factory floor became the new front line. A new breed of robot is blurring the lines between heavy industrial automation and human-scale collaboration, threatening to upend decades of manufacturing strategy. At the same time, a quiet breakthrough in AI-powered grasping could finally unlock automation for the trillion-dollar logistics and grocery industries. The race is on to solve the physical world. So what does this mean for the future of your supply chain, your factory, and the cost of everything you buy? That's what we're here to figure out. Welcome to the Robotics Strategic Briefing. Ben, let's set the stage. The macro-level sentiment in the industrial sector this week is one of cautious tension. On one hand, persistent supply chain volatility and stubbornly high inventory costs are creating a clear and present need for operational efficiency. U.S. business logistics costs are now sitting at a level that is forcing executives to act.
But on the other hand, a cooling economy and decelerating capital expenditure growth mean that large, monolithic automation projects are facing intense scrutiny. The result, as we're seeing, is a strategic pivot away from moonshots and towards modular, ROI-focused robotic deployments that can deliver flexibility and resilience in an unpredictable market.
Exactly. And that tension is the perfect backdrop for our first major theme this week. A new class of robot is emerging that offers both power and flexibility. We're calling it the rise of the cobot industrial hybrid. So Ben, what's the catalyst for this new hybrid category?
The most tangible evidence comes from the floor of last month's Automate 2025 show. Specifically, we saw the debut of the StandardBot's Infinity Arm, a collaborative robot or cobot that pushes the payload capacity to 30 kilograms. This isn't just an incremental update, it places a cobot directly into the payload territory of smaller industrial robots. We're seeing this convergence across the board. Cobots are getting stronger, while traditional industrial arms from giants like Fanuc and Kuka are being equipped with more sophisticated sensors to work safely near humans. The hardware is blurring the lines.
And the why now is clear. The era of predictable, high-volume manufacturing that justified massive caged industrial robots is fading from many sectors. Geopolitical friction and demand volatility mean that adaptability is the new competitive advantage. This new class of high-payload cobots directly addresses this. It offers a third way for operations managers who need the lifting capacity of an industrial arm but the programmability and smaller footprint of a collaborative system. They can optimizing without the cost and rigidity of full-scale caging.
But here's the second-order technical impact that isn't being discussed. We're pushing the very definition of collaborative. A 30-kilogram payload moving at over 1 meter per second generates significant momentum. While the arm has sensors to stop on contact, the force exerted before that stop is non-trivial. The real technical challenge isn't just the hardware, it's the risk assessment software and the safety-rated motion planners needed to make these systems truly safe for unfenced operation.
Which means the business model for integrators is changing. The question is no longer if you can automate a 25-kilogram lift, but how you can do it with the lowest possible total cost of ownership and the highest degree of flexibility. This puts immense pressure on the value proposition of legacy systems. Therefore, our primary intelligence gap is no longer about the technical feasibility of these hybrid systems. Instead, leadership must now track the emergence of a new unified safety standard. The critical unknown is, what will the certifying bodies like TÜV and ISO require to validate these high-payload collaborative applications? And what will be the impact of those standards on achievable cycle times and overall productivity? That brings us to our second theme, a fundamental shift in how robots interact with the world, moving from brute force to intelligent finesse.
The catalysts here are coming from the research community. 2 preprint papers from Archive are particularly noteworthy. The first, Feel the Force, demonstrates a robot learning complex assembly tasks by physically interpreting the force feedback from a human guide. The second, Savor, showcases a system that uses a combination of vision and tactile sensors to successfully handle delicate food items. We're seeing the commercial manifestation of this in platforms like SagTech's new dining robot, which uses AI-driven spatial awareness for delicate service tasks.
The why now for this is simple. Market pull from previously untouchable sectors. For years, the barrier to automation in e-commerce fulfillment and food preparation has been variability. Traditional robots fail when faced with a bin of mixed or deformable items. The convergence of affordable 3D cameras and powerful AI models finally makes it possible to solve this each-picking problem at scale. Labor shortages and wage inflation in these sectors are creating a powerful economic incentive to crack this nut right now.
But the transition from a research paper to a robust commercial product is brutal. The Savor paper highlights the challenge of visual haptic perception. Combining data from a camera with data from a tactile sensor for thousands of different items with different textures and friction coefficients is a monumental software and data science challenge. The underlying issue is the need for massive, high-quality training data sets that simply do not exist for most real-world applications yet.
And this is what unlocks a total addressable market that was previously inaccessible. Companies that commercialize this can sell into logistics, grocery, and quick-service restaurants, multi-trillion-dollar industries. It fundamentally changes the ROI calculation for warehouses. Instead of just automating the movement of pallets, you can now automate the highest cost, most labor-intensive part of the fulfillment chain.
The strategic imperative, therefore, is to look beyond the grasping demos. The ability to pick up an object is becoming commoditized. The key intelligence gap we must now close is identifying which companies are building the most scalable and efficient data pipelines and simulation environments for training these AI models. The winner in this space will not be the one with the best gripper, but the one with the best AI training engine.
So, let's tie this all together. What's the single most important signal from this week?
The strategic focus of automation is decisively shifting from raw throughput to intelligent adaptability. The most valuable robotic systems are no longer the fastest and strongest, but the ones that can learn, adapt to variability, and be redeployed with minimal cost and effort.
I agree. And that means the winners will be the companies that treat robotics as a software and AI challenge, not just a hardware one. Now, for our contrarian view, there's an argument to be made that the industry's fascination with advanced AI and novel hardware is a distraction. The real immediate value over the next 24 months lies not in reinventing the robot, but in radically improving the software that deploys and manages the millions of proven non-humanoid robotic arms that are already installed. And finally, what's the most important emerging capability investors and strategists must begin planning for in the next 3 to 6 months? It's the arrival of the first truly viable multi-purpose grasping platform. This will likely be a combination of a 3D vision system, an AI model pre-trained on millions of items, and a software development kit for easy integration. The emergence of such a platform will be a significant deflationary force on the cost of logistics automation and will trigger a new wave of investment. If you found this briefing valuable and want to maintain your strategic edge, hit that subscribe button. We're here every week to cut through the noise. And now we want to hear from you. What's the biggest barrier to robotics adoption in your industry? Let us know in the comments below. Ben and I will be responding. Thanks for watching.
The catalysts here are coming from the research community. 2 preprint papers from Archive are particularly noteworthy. The first, Feel the Force, demonstrates a robot learning complex assembly tasks by physically interpreting the force feedback from a human guide. The second, Savor, showcases a system that uses a combination of vision and tactile sensors to successfully handle delicate food items. We're seeing the commercial manifestation of this in platforms like SagTech's new dining robot, which uses AI-driven spatial awareness for delicate service tasks.
The why now for this is simple. Market pull from previously untouchable sectors. For years, the barrier to automation in e-commerce fulfillment and food preparation has been variability. Traditional robots fail when faced with a bin of mixed or deformable items. The convergence of affordable 3D cameras and powerful AI models finally makes it possible to solve this each-picking problem at scale. Labor shortages and wage inflation in these sectors are creating a powerful economic incentive to crack this nut right now.
But the transition from a research paper to a robust commercial product is brutal. The Savor paper highlights the challenge of visual haptic perception. Combining data from a camera with data from a tactile sensor for thousands of different items with different textures and friction coefficients is a monumental software and data science challenge. The underlying issue is the need for massive, high-quality training datasets that simply do not exist for most real-world applications yet.
And this is what unlocks a total addressable market that was previously inaccessible. Companies that commercialize this can sell into logistics, grocery, and quick-service restaurants, multi-trillion-dollar industries. It fundamentally changes the ROI calculation for warehouses. Instead of just automating the movement of pallets, you can now automate the highest cost, most labor-intensive part of the fulfillment chain.
The strategic imperative, therefore, is to look beyond the grasping demos. The ability to pick up an object is becoming commoditized. The key intelligence gap we must now close is identifying which companies are building the most scalable and efficient data pipelines and simulation environments for training these AI models. The winner in this space will not be the one with the best gripper, but the one with the best AI training engine.
So, let's tie this all together. What's the single most important signal from this week?
The strategic focus of automation is decisively shifting from raw throughput to intelligent adaptability. The most valuable robotic systems are no longer the fastest and strongest, but the ones that can learn, adapt to variability, and be redeployed with minimal cost and effort.
I agree. And that means the winners will be the companies that treat robotics as a software and AI challenge, not just a hardware one. Now, for our contrarian view, there's an argument to be made that the industry's fascination with advanced AI and novel hardware is a distraction. The real immediate value over the next 24 months lies not in reinventing the robot, but in radically improving the software that deploys and manages the millions of proven non-humanoid robotic arms that are already installed. And finally, what's the most important emerging capability investors and strategists must begin planning for in the next 3 to 6 months? It's the arrival of the first truly viable multi-purpose grasping platform. This will likely be a combination of a 3D vision system, an AI model pre-trained on millions of items, and a software development kit for easy integration. The emergence of such a platform will be a significant deflationary force on the cost of logistics automation and will trigger a new wave of investment. If you found this briefing valuable and want to maintain your strategic edge, hit that subscribe button. We're here every week to cut through the noise. And now we want to hear from you. What's the biggest barrier to robotics adoption in your industry? Let us know in the comments below. Ben and I will be responding. Thanks for watching.
This week, the abstract world of quantum mechanics got very real.
To robotics adoption in your industry, let us know in the comments below. Ben and I will be responding. Thanks for watching.
This week, the abstract world of quantum mechanics got very real. Over $1 billion in new investment flooded the sector in just the last quarter, as nations are now publicly declaring their quantum ambitions. At the same time, researchers used a quantum computer to solve a critical problem for our national power grid, moving this technology out of the lab and into our critical infrastructure. The quantum race is no longer theoretical. So what does this mean for the future of cryptography, energy, and national security? That's what we're here to figure out. Welcome to the Quantum Strategic Briefing. Ben, let's set the stage. The quantum ecosystem this week is characterized by a palpable acceleration. This isn't just hype, it's underscored by a significant surge in Q1 investment, with over $1.25 billion injected into quantum computer companies alone, more than double last year's figures.
And that financial momentum is happening alongside a crystallization of national strategies. We're seeing Canada make quantum a G7 priority, Finland leading an EU quantum defense project, and China setting aggressive 2030 goals for quantum-based metrology. This suggests the sector is entering a new phase of execution, driven by intense geopolitical competition.
Exactly. And this brings us to our first major theme. With the hardware still in its noisy early stages, the real progress is coming from cleverly combining quantum and classical computers. We're calling this hybrid algorithms ascendant. So Ben, what's the catalyst that shows these hybrid algorithms are more than just a theory?
This week, we got a powerful real-world demonstration from a collaboration between IonQ and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. On June 8th, they published work detailing how they used a hybrid quantum classical algorithm to tackle the unit commitment problem in power grid optimization. This is a notoriously complex challenge for even the best supercomputers. They ran their experiments on IonQ's Forte system, using about 36 algorithmic qubits to find promising ways to configure a simulated 26-generator power grid.
And the why now for this is clear. The energy sector is under immense pressure to optimize grid operations for cost, resilience, and renewable integration. At the same time, investors are demanding to see near-term value from their quantum investments. This demonstration feeds directly into that demand. It shows a viable pathway to using today's noisy intermediate-scale quantum, or NISQ computers, to get an edge on high-value industrial problems, rather than waiting a decade for perfect fault-tolerant machines.
But here's the second-order technical impact. The barren plateau phenomenon remains a huge concern for these types of variational algorithms. As you scale the problem, the optimization landscape can become flat, making it impossible to find a good solution. Furthermore, the classical part of the hybrid system still does the heavy lifting. The quantum processor is essentially acting like a very sophisticated coprocessor to explore a vast search space and suggest good starting points. The efficiency of the data link between the quantum and classical systems is a massive engineering bottleneck that can easily erase any potential quantum speedup.
So even with this success, the strategic impact is that it provides a clearer roadmap for industries like logistics, finance, and pharma to start investing in pilot projects. It lowers the barrier from wait for a miracle to explore hybrid solutions now. This will accelerate the demand for quantum-specific software and specialized consulting services. Therefore, our primary intelligence gap is no longer if hybrid solutions can offer value, but which specific problem classes are most amenable to this approach at scale. We need robust, transparent benchmarks that directly compare these hybrid methods against the best classical algorithms on industry-relevant problems, not just academic test cases. That's the only way for leadership to know where to place their bets. That brings us to our second theme. The quantum race is no longer just between companies, it's between nations. We're calling it the quantum sovereignty gambit.
The catalysts here were a flurry of national-level strategic moves this past week. As you mentioned, Canada is making quantum a G7 priority. Finland is leading a new EU quantum defense project, and China has publicized its 2030 metrology goals, which are heavily dependent on quantum-enhanced precision. These aren't just funding announcements. They are specific, public declarations of intent. China's focus on metrology, for example, isn't just about better clocks. It's about developing quantum sensors that enable GPS-independent navigation, a critical strategic capability.
And the why now is driven by a single, terrifying deadline, Q-Day. That's the hypothetical point when a quantum computer becomes powerful enough to break the encryption that protects nearly all of our digital infrastructure. The urgency of store now, decrypt later attacks, where adversaries harvest encrypted data today to break with a future quantum computer, is forcing governments to act. This is compelling them to invest in both defensive measures, like the new post-quantum cryptography standards from NIST, and their own offensive quantum capabilities.
But the technical reality is that these national strategies are forcing specialization. A defense-focused project in the EU might prioritize rugged quantum sensors over fundamental material science. China's metrology goal will pour resources into atomic clocks and magnetometers. The downside is a potential fragmentation of global research. If the hardware and software stacks diverge too much between these emerging geopolitical blocks, it becomes harder to build upon innovations from other ecosystems.
The first-order strategic impact is the solidification of these quantum technology blocks. This will complicate international scientific collaboration, but will also create opportunities for friendshoring of quantum supply chains and talent within these trusted partner networks. It forces companies to decide which ecosystem they are aligned with. This leads us to our final, critical intelligence gap. Ambitious national goals are one thing, but execution is another. Quantum computing relies on a deeply complex global supply chain for things like advanced cryogenics, high-stability lasers, and qubit fabrication. Therefore, our primary intelligence gap is understanding the true resilience of these emerging national quantum supply chains. We need to identify which nations or blocks control the critical choke points for these enabling technologies. Answering that question will reveal the true viability of these national strategies. So, let's tie this all together. What's the single most important signal from this week?
That the quantum sector is simultaneously maturing into a more structured industry driven by major investment and a demand for verifiable progress, while also fragmenting along geopolitical lines as nations assert quantum sovereignty through specialized initiatives.
I agree. The technology is getting real, and so are the global stakes. Now for our contrarian view. There's an argument to be made that despite these national pronouncements and successes in hybrid algorithms, the fundamental challenges of building large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers remain so immense that these strategic investments may be premature. It's plausible that advances in classical high-performance computing and AI-driven heuristics will solve many of these problems faster and cheaper. And finally, what's the most important emerging capability, or rather necessity, that leadership must begin planning for in the next 3 to 6 months? It's the practical, enterprise-wide integration of post-quantum cryptography. With NIST standards now finalized, the focus is shifting from algorithm selection to the incredibly complex and expensive challenge of implementation. This is no longer a theoretical exercise. It is an impending operational imperative for any organization handling sensitive data. If you found this briefing valuable and want to maintain your strategic edge, hit that subscribe button. We're here. This week, the strategic conversation in energy snapped into focus. It's no longer about simply adding clean megawatts to the grid. It's about delivering clean, reliable 24/7 power. A major policy pivot is redirecting billions away from mature renewables and towards the deep tech of next-generation firm power. At the same time, a breakthrough in battery technology threatens to upend the lithium dynasty. The race for clean, reliable energy just entered a new phase. So what does this mean for the future of our grid, energy security, and the multi-trillion-dollar energy transition? That's what we're here to figure out. Welcome to the Energy Strategic Briefing. Ben, let's set the stage. The core tension this week is that the physical constraints of the grid are finally dictating policy. We're seeing grid operators in California and Germany warn about grid stability, haunted by the Dunkelflaute, the dark doldrums when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing.
And this operational reality is creating a massive policy pivot. The White House's 2026 budget proposal signals a major shift. It proposes deep cuts to offices that fund mature renewable deployment while preserving robust funding for advanced nuclear and, critically, the underlying science for technologies like fusion.
Exactly. And that brings us to our first theme. As government policy pivots towards firm power, a long-shot technology is getting a serious second look. We're calling it the fusion renaissance. So Ben, what's the catalyst putting fusion back in the spotlight?
The catalyst isn't just one event, but a convergence. We're seeing private companies like TA Technologies report major progress with their NORM FRC device, which is a fundamentally different approach to magnetic confinement. At the same time, the EU has formally launched a comprehensive fusion strategy to accelerate commercialization, and here at home, the Fusion Industry Association is lobbying hard for the funding of a US-based fusion pilot plant program.
The why now for this is clear. With natural gas prices holding around $3.75 per MMBTU, there is immense strategic pressure to develop a clean, domestic, dispatchable power source that isn't dependent on volatile commodity markets or geopolitics. This government pivot away from funding intermittent renewables opens a massive window for the fusion industry to make the case that they are the ultimate solution for long-term energy security and independence.
But here's the critical second-order technical impact. This policy pivot and renewed interest puts immense pressure on the core engineering challenges. It shifts the focus from achieving net energy gain in a single shot, the physics problem, to the brutal engineering of a commercial power plant. The number one problem now is material science, developing the structural materials for the reactor's first wall that can withstand constant high-energy neutron bombardment for years without becoming brittle or radioactive.
And that's the key strategic impact. A credible path to fusion, even a decade plus out, provides a massive tailwind for the entire deep tech sector. But it also forces a difficult question for investors and utilities. How do you value and plan for a technology with such a long horizon, but such a transformative potential payoff? Therefore, our primary intelligence gap is no longer about the physics. It's about the industrial capacity to execute. The critical question leadership must track is this. As federal policy pivots towards firm power, what is the true manufacturing and supply chain readiness of the fusion sector to absorb this new capital and meet these accelerated timelines for things like advanced materials and high-temperature superconductors? That brings us to our second theme, a direct assault on the foundations of the energy storage market. We're calling it the battery battlefield, sodium-ion versus lithium.
The catalyst here comes from CATL, the world's largest battery manufacturer. On Monday, they announced Naxtra, which they are calling the world's first mass-produced sodium-ion battery. The key technical specification is an energy density of 175 watt-hours per kilogram. To be clear, this is directly comparable to the lithium iron phosphate, or LFP batteries that are the workhorse of grid storage and standard-range EVs today. Critically, it achieves this using sodium, one of the most abundant and cheapest elements on Earth, and avoids the volatile and geographically concentrated supply chains of lithium and cobalt.
The timing of this is strategically perfect. The IEA just forecast that clean energy investment will hit $2.2 trillion in 2025, with a huge part of that predicated on falling battery costs. CATL's announcement directly attacks the single biggest vulnerability in that forecast, the geopolitics of lithium. By presenting a viable, scalable alternative, they are de-risking the entire energy storage and EV supply chain.
But the second-order technical challenge is proving this at gigafactory scale. While the energy density is impressive, we need to see the data on cycle life under the high-stress conditions of grid applications. Does it degrade faster than LFP? What is its real-world round-trip efficiency? Furthermore, manufacturing lines built for lithium-ion chemistries may need significant, costly retooling to handle sodium-ion, potentially slowing down initial production. The chemistry may be cheaper, but the capital expenditure to switch could be a hidden barrier.
The first-order strategic impact here is profound. This could put a hard ceiling on lithium and cobalt prices. For utilities and grid developers, the potential to source grid-scale batteries without exposure to lithium price volatility is a game-changer. For automakers, a viable sodium-ion battery could slash the cost of their most affordable EVs. This creates a new competitive imperative. Any battery manufacturer not developing a sodium-ion alternative is now at a significant strategic disadvantage. This leads to our final critical intelligence gap. The hype is credible, but the ground truth is essential. The most critical strategic question we must track now is the real-world performance and cost curve of these first-generation sodium-ion grid packs. We need to move beyond the press release and find out, what is the all-in, levelized cost of storage for a utility-scale sodium-ion system? And what does the degradation warranty from CATL actually guarantee over a 10-year service life? So, let's tie this all together. What's the single most important signal from this week?
The era of prioritizing renewable generation is over. The era of prioritizing clean reliability has begun, fundamentally reordering capital flows and policy priorities toward firm power technologies and the storage that enables them.
I agree. The game has changed from addition to assurance. Now, for our contrarian view, there's an argument that Washington's pivot away from mature renewables is premature and strategically flawed. While firm power is essential, abandoning deployment support for wind, solar, and lithium-ion storage, technologies that are market-ready now, in favor of decade-plus promises from fusion and SMR, creates a dangerous valley of death in our decarbonization efforts. And finally, what's the technology we must begin planning for immediately in the next 3 to 6 months? It's advanced geothermal systems. While fusion and SMRs get the headlines, breakthroughs in deep drilling are making AGS a here-and-now source of clean, firm power. Expect a major private funding round or a technical milestone from an AGS startup within the next 6 months that will force the market to see it as a primary competitor to natural gas. If you found this briefing valuable and want to maintain your strategic edge, hit that subscribe button. We're here every week to cut through the noise. And now we want to hear from you. Which technology, fusion, SMRs, or advanced geothermal, do you believe is the most realistic path to clean, firm power? Let us know in the comments below. Ben and I will be responding. Thanks for watching. Ben and I will be responding. Thanks for watching.
Investors are caught in a tug of war. The market is nervous about persistent inflation and a cautious Fed, yet a new class of strategic technology is attracting billions in private capital, defying the broader market mood. We're seeing a great divergence, where capital is flowing not just to the buzziest trends, but to companies building the hard assets and AI-powered systems crucial for national security and supply chain resilience. So where is the smart money actually going? And how can you separate the real, defensible investments from the hype? That's what we're here to figure out. Welcome to the Financial Strategic Briefing. Ben, let's set the stage. Investor sentiment this week is complex. There's a clear appetite for tech that solves critical global challenges, energy security, national defense. But this is happening against a backdrop of caution, fueled by stubborn inflation data and a Federal Reserve that is emphasizing patience over preemption.
And this environment is forcing investors to become more discerning. We're seeing a bifurcation between what you could call speculative tech and strategic tech. The key insight is that technologies aligning with national interests or solving critical infrastructure vulnerabilities seem to be commanding a strategic premium, even in a cautious market.
Exactly. And that brings us to our first theme, how national interests are rewriting the rules of tech investment. We're calling it the geopolitical imperative. So Ben, what's the catalyst for this theme? What's the big financial signal?
Alex, the signal is a massive one from the defense tech space. This past week, Anduril Industries, which specializes in AI-powered autonomous defense systems, closed a $2.5 billion Series G funding round. This financing gives it a post-money valuation of $30.5 billion. This isn't just another large funding round. It's one of the largest for a hardware-intensive startup in this climate.
And the why now for this is clear. Anduril's funding isn't happening in a vacuum. It's a direct reflection of escalating geopolitical tensions. The conflict in Ukraine showcased the disruptive power of autonomous systems, creating a powerful, non-discretionary demand driver for companies like Anduril. This is less about market cycles and more about strategic national imperatives.
But here's the critical second-order fundamental impact. While the top-line narrative is compelling, the numbers require scrutiny. Anduril is private, but its $30.5 billion valuation implies massive future revenue. For public companies in this space, we need to look at margin sustainability, especially when governments are the primary customer. Take APA Corporation, which aligns with the energy security theme. Its stock trades at a PE ratio of roughly 6.1x, half the sector median. This suggests the market is still weighing execution risks despite the strategic alignment.
And that's the key first-order impact. We're seeing a significant reweighting of investment towards defense tech, aerospace, and critical infrastructure. It's not just the prime contractors, it's the entire ecosystem. The quantum sector, for example, is seeing a surge in interest for its national security applications. OQC's recently published roadmap, explicitly targeting the security and defense sectors, is a testament to this trend. This leads us to our primary intelligence gap. It's about identifying the under-recognized cogs in these emerging sovereign tech supply chains. The key question is, which publicly traded small or mid-cap companies have critical, hard-to-replicate technology for defense or energy security, but are currently undervalued due to a lack of broad market visibility? The real alpha might be in these hidden champions. That brings us to our second theme, moving beyond the buzzword to find where AI is delivering measurable financial results. We're calling it AI's tangible ROI.
The catalyst here is the clear move towards scaling real-world AI applications. The robotics briefing highlighted Walmart expanding its drone delivery service to 100 more stores. This isn't a pilot, it's scaling operations. Simultaneously, Serve Robotics, which focuses on sidewalk delivery and has integrations with Uber Eats, has garnered a strong buy rating from analysts. Their latest 10K shows revenue jumping from roughly $200,000 to $1.81 million year over year, driven primarily by software services revenue.
The why now for this is driven by pure economics. The May employment report showed average hourly earnings gaining 0.42%, significantly exceeding forecasts. Businesses are desperately seeking deflationary technologies to counteract these rising labor costs. AI has now matured to a point where it can reliably and cost-effectively handle these complex real-world tasks. We're seeing this in the energy sector too. Baker Hughes is leveraging its AI-driven asset management solution to boost margins, with its Q1 climate tech revenue surging 114% year over year.
But when we look at the numbers, the difference between aspirational AI and profitable AI becomes stark. Serve Robotics, despite the hype, still faces major challenges. Analyst estimates show an expected EBITDA loss of $19.1 million in FY25. Their 10K reveals that 91% of their revenue comes from just two customers, Magna and Uber, and an amendment noted material weaknesses in their financial controls.
Contrast that with Baker Hughes, which has a $33.2 billion backlog of remaining performance obligations, indicating strong, visible future revenue from its applied AI solutions.
The first-order sector impact is a flight to quality. Investors are moving beyond general AI themes to back companies with clear use cases, strong customer adoption, and quantifiable financial benefits. The new picks and shovels play extends beyond just chip makers to companies providing specialized AI development tools and data labeling services that are essential for achieving this tangible ROI.
Therefore, the critical intelligence gap for investors is developing a framework to differentiate between AI companies with genuinely defensible moats built on proprietary data or deeply integrated systems and those merely applying commoditized AI tools. How can investors measure the true alpha generated by a company's AI beyond marketing claims before it's fully reflected in earnings reports?
So, let's tie this all together. What's the single most important signal from this week?
That deep tech investment is increasingly being driven by strategic imperatives, geopolitical resilience, and tangible AI-driven efficiencies, forcing a sharper distinction between speculative ventures and those with clear, defensible value propositions in critical sectors.
I agree. The market is prioritizing demonstrable problem-solving over pure growth narratives.
Now for our contrarian view. The intense focus on sovereign tech and AI ROI could lead to overcrowded trades in a few favored subsectors. The real, less contested opportunities might lie in the boring but essential enabling infrastructure, things like specialized testing and certification services for AI, advanced material recycling, or the workforce training programs needed to operate these new technologies. And finally, what's the most important emerging financial trend investors must begin positioning for in the next 3 to 6 months? It's the bifurcation in energy transition investment. We anticipate a growing valuation premium on technologies and assets that ensure grid stability to meet the surging power demands from AI data centers. This includes advanced battery storage, next-generation nuclear, and even strategically located natural gas assets that act as a reliability bridge. If you found this briefing valuable and want to maintain your strategic edge, hit that subscribe button. We're here every week to cut through the noise. And now we want to hear from you. Which picks and shovels companies in the deep tech supply chain do you think are most undervalued? Let us know in the comments below. Ben and I will be responding. Thanks for watching. Now for our contrarian.